Have you checked the children? You're a little mad sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Greetings, Fright fans, and welcome to the Horror Show. I am Jaime and Fuego, and so to be welcoming you back for another installment of Stephen King recommended horror. Now, I have to say that this is going to be like a little bit of a lightning round of sorts because of the fact that, yes, I did do reviews proper for the two previous bits that Nick Cutter did, and that would be both of these. So, The Troop and The Deep, and yet I kind of mustered through his last few, releases under that particular, name, because yes, it is a pen name. It's very much like a Bachman as far as King goes, and yeah, I was not as dazzled. I have to say, I loved The Troop, and I really loved The Deep. Shout out to Mike Kearns from Mike's Book Reviews, because of the fact that he was saying that a book that I'm about to give at least a few thoughts here is his like next foray following The Troop, because there has been some derision about The Deep. But I have reviews of both of these books up there, and here on the Horror Show, obviously, and so very just. I don't know. Despite the fact that, Nick goes back to a lot of similar tropes about, fatherhood, about, just the nastiness and permutation of just infection, I guess. It's something that he kind of falls back into with two of the three books here, but also with the aspect of religion. And so, first and foremost, I am going to jump into the third book penned under the Nick Cutter name, and that is The Acolyte. And so The Acolyte is one that is not really horror, and that's why I was wondering if I should throw it on my Infotainment like separate page, or if I should actually cover it here, proper with the Horror Show. And yeah, with the Stephen King recommended segment, I know that, I did The Ruins, and then it's been just kind of at a standstill on, Nick Cutter, and that's with good reason, because of the fact that I love those first two books. But, with the other three, and most notably The Acolyte, I was really enjoying this one initially because of the fact that it is so religiously heavy, and it's envisioning a North America, because he's a Canadian author, but it's a North America specifically where the religious right has most definitely taken over, like almost what we are staring down with certain laws being overruled. I'm not trying to be a political participant here, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff with Roe Wade and whatever that is transpiring, and so it's altering a lot of specific freedoms that we were, and most notably of a different gender than my own, able to, just take part in. And so anyway, The Acolyte is about a just very visceral sort of religious police state in a place called New Bethlehem, of all things. And since I was raised Reformed Baptist, I mean, this hit very heavily with me. And you have two different orphans who are essentially our main characters. So our main one has a little bit of a crush on the other lady, but the fact that she is a little bit more visceral and aggressive and scandalous, at least as far as his estimation. There is a terrorist bombing that transpires early in the book, and it is essentially the linchpin for everything that transpires as far as him having a crisis of faith and just questioning and actually getting a little bit closer with this other woman that he was going through the training process with. Now, this one captivated me initially, massively, in fact. But as it started to wear out its welcome a little bit, and it really wore out its welcome, unfortunately, it was when they started like taking into consideration like the fact that there was like a traveling circus aspect, and almost like what we saw in the 80s and 90s with televangelism. And I know that has kind of fallen out of vogue, thankfully. But I mean, my parents, are actually very devout and awesome people, and they never fell into, those sort of traps of sorts. Like, they always thought that those people were phony, and it is something that is most definitely touched upon in The Acolyte. I think there's a reason why, as opposed to these two, and then the book that I am about to discuss being Little Heaven, yeah, there's a reason why The Acolyte is not in proper print. It's because of the fact that, I mean, as you guys saw with the cover of the book, it's a you know, police symbol with, you know, Jesus on the cross and everything. So it's very, you know, just pushing buttons as far as how people will be reactionary about it. But I did find the finale, even though it's a little bit Running Man, if you've seen, well, no, not seen, because of the fact that Arnie does not go into the same sort of scenario. But yeah, there is a Nick Cutter, most definitely, and, you know, Craig, I believe, is the actual proper name of this guy, who writes under a few different pen names. Yeah, he takes a lot of cues from Sai King, you know, massively. El Rey has informed his writing significantly, and that's probably why I like it so much. But, you know, at the end of the day, The Acolyte, after I was so over the moon for both the Troop and then even more so the Deep, yeah, I was a little bit more ho-hum, because I felt like there was such amazing world building in this, you know, with the fact that, you know, there is this religious, like, police state of sorts going on throughout North America, and yet, I don't know, it kind of lost its luster, yeah, especially as we got to the back half of the book. So that is some very brief thoughts. As I said, this is a lightning round, and this is me, you know, properly filling out the last little bits of, you know, the Stephen King recommended horror from Nick Cutter. Because, really, I mean, it's sitting here on this particular book. The Troop scared the hell out of me, and I couldn't put it down. This is old school horror at its best, and they even ran with it here on the Deep as well. But yeah, the Troop, which, you know, fuses Lord of the Flies with The Thing and a few other bits, like, fantastic book, fantastic book. But if we're gonna talk about Nick Cutter, as he calls himself with these horror related stuff, jumping back to his wheelhouse, we have to mention Little Heaven. And Little Heaven, like, if we are talking about a hodgepodge of so many different ideas all fusing together, this book is like maybe 5 or 6 different things all at once. Because of the fact that, yes, you do have, once again, a aspect of The Thing, but then you also have an aspect of Evil Children, you have an aspect of a Western, you have an aspect of, you know, Jim Jones, and, you know, all of that different stuff as far as, like, a cult leader and whatnot. So I almost felt like Nick overstuffed the turkey here a little bit, because I do enjoy it, and but yet once again taking lots of cues from Sai King in this particular regard, most notably in the fact that we do the time jump aspect. And so if I'm gonna, without spoiling like an excessive amount, give a brief aspect, there is a trio of, I guess you would call them assassins, in the 60s that are pitted against each other, and then they are all fused together in kind of a odd friendship of sorts, and they are called back together. Are you seeing the It similarities, you know, decades later, and they have to go and make sure that the evil presence that is in a Northern California area, a la It, you know, Pennywise, whatever the presence that you want to classify, you know, Mr. Gray as, yeah, they have to reconvene, and they have been impervious to death in the interlude, which is incredibly interesting. And, yeah, it has echoes of, I mean, let's be honest, it has echoes of Salem's Lot, or even before that, Village of the Damned, if we're going to do, you know, the bit that was remade with, Carpenter and, you know, Kristopher Reeves, if I remember correctly. I think that was the last film that he made before the, you know, paralysis transpired after the horse throw-off, and so that's the thing. But also the fact that there is this essence of residual evil and a calling aspect. So our stand-in for Jim Jones is kind of called to this area, and the fact that it's also California. I mean, granted, not Guyana, I don't know, somewhere in, you know, Central America was where Jonestown actually transpired and all of that disgusting death. But I do appreciate the fact that there is a very virtuous essence to our lead, and the fact that his daughter is taken, and that is what, you know, causes him to go and track down the other two people, that there was the aspect of when they first faced down, when they were, trying to get some information, and they were hired guns, but when they were trying to initially get some information about the disappearance of a particular person, and that's how they found themselves in this spot in Northern California. So there is still, like, off topic and off narrative, actually. There's a flashback in this book that is one of the most disturbingly effed up things that I have read in recent memory. So this is high praise for this particular book, in the fact that there is a girl who is a woman now, grown up and everything, but she is recalling, and she's one of our main characters, she is recalling the death of her little brother at the hands of a snake. And it's really messed up in the fact that she wanted to try to thwart and try to stop this from transpiring, but we're talking an escaped, like, big snake. I'm trying to remember if it was a boa or a python or whatever, but yeah, it eats her brother. It's so just meticulously described, too. It's messed up, man. It genuinely is, and so it's still one of the biggest moments within this book that sticks out to me, much more so than the possessed kid, much more so than Nick Cutter, as I mentioned earlier, very much likes to talk about fungal infections and how it takes over people and how it messes with their minds and stuff. He did it in The Deep. He did it in The Troop. And unfortunately, in our final lightning round here, being The Breach, I will most definitely mention the fact that Nick Cutter, as he likes to call himself when he's writing horror, he has that sort of MO. He has, the things that he pivots toward and gravitates, toward, and so on and so forth. And yet, Little Heaven, I will most definitely say, is, it's more captivating, significantly, than The Acolyte, and yet it has a very comparable ending to what happens with a father and progeny dynamic to The Deep. There's a lot of parallels. There really most definitely are, and I can tell that, Nick, as he likes to call himself when he's writing scarific shit, he has the weight of fatherhood just weighing heavily upon him. And that's fascinating, and as a father, not myself, yet both of my little brothers are, it's interesting. It most definitely is, and it shows where his convictions lie, and where he most definitely has stuff that he ruminates about and things that weigh heavily on his heart. And so, to just veer back to that as often as he has from The Deep with a missing child. This is another one where there's a missing child, and a child that is taken, to this, I'm not going to say coven, but this, like, isolated retreat sort of thing. If you're a fan of the band Airborne Toxic Event, which is one of my favorite bands of all time, man. Mikkel was part, as he was growing up, of one of those weird, isolated communities in the more rural areas of California. And so, explores that well. Back to my buddy Mike Kearns from Mike's Book Reviews, he was saying that this was recommended to him as a Western. Well, there's a very signature shootout moment where our three characters who eventually become friends, they have kind of a standoff, so to speak, and it's like, everybody's pointing at everybody, and what the hell is going to happen, and it's all because of the fact that there is one who is after somebody who was a psychedelic, like, meth kind of cooker at that particular point. I'm trying not to mention, but that's another thing, man. I mean, it's an aspect of the book that it feels very inherent and important to, the set dress and the early conviction of our main character in Jonas, I believe is his name. But yet, it's kind of left by the wayside as we get into the deeper aspect of. So that's where as much as I did enjoy, Little Heaven more so than The Acolyte, it still felt like there were too many ideas all just kind of cohabitating, and yeah, it didn't feel as cohesive, I think, as I was wanting it to. That's not to say that there aren't really impactful moments, because there sure as shit are. Most notably, where there was one kid in particular you think is dead, and there is even a major move made to make said kid dead. resides onward. And so that's where I make, kind of the Salem's Lot and the Village of the Damned and some of those, connotations and whatnot. So at the end of the day, especially because of the fact that the ending was incredibly satisfying despite so many of the It parallels as far as like getting the band back together, as far as residual evil residing in a particular place, there's lots of that, but at the end of the day, it was definitely an improvement on the Acolyte. Initially, I was probably preferring the Acolyte because of the fact that, there was that major religious aspect different to the cult, Jonestown bit that we have in Just Like Heaven, yeah. I keep thinking of The Cure, for goddamn sake. But yeah, in Little Heaven, it just, once it got there, it was still very well written. Big props to Nick Cutter in the fact that he always brings it from a linguistic standpoint and from just lots of flashbacks, and it's something where I make the King connotation and comparison constantly because of the fact that, dude, he's like, I experienced this, and it reminded me of this that happened to me when I was an adolescent, and yada yada yada. It's something King does frequently, most notably in different seasons and some of the non-horror centric sort of bits that he is well acclaimed for. But yeah, man, Little Heaven is it's solid, but it's not amazing, and it is nowhere near, unfortunately, on the level of either of these. Now, we are rounding out the lightning round here. I'm not sure if this is going to go up in early November. It's probably going to be kind of contingent upon the fact that we are finally filming Dylan's new Nightmare, guys. Yeah, it's incredibly exciting and very, very long in the tooth and long in the waiting aspect because we filmed the trailer, in 2019. But shout out to Cecil, the founder of The Feast, as I all too often describe him, and the fact that, so if this more evergreen episode goes up in early November as opposed to like a Book of the Month or whatever, it's because of the fact that we are so steeped in other aspects of production. This is probably the best time to make mention, is the fact that I am officially, after well over a decade, returning to collegiate informant. I'm going back to school, everybody. It's probably one of the reasons why I have been less involved in social media, most notably the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group and stuff like that. I've just been, steeped in all kinds of other things, and most notably the fact that I have been officially accepted to the Arizona State University Liberal Arts Program of Film and Media Study. I am incredibly excited. I was there as a journalism major well over a decade ago, as I mentioned, and I ended up switching and going to trade school, getting an audio production technology degree, but with a little bit of work that has been done with my day job, it has actually given me the ability to go and not spend the insane amount that, people put themselves indebted to head back and get that sort of tutelage and stuff. And so I am incredibly, I hate that sort of, the hashtag blessed, blah, blah, blah. But man, it is a opportunity that I am humbled and honored to have the ability to forge forward with. But there was still one more Nick Cutter for us to finally put this to sleep, and then I can shift over to Swan Song and, Robert and, some of the others that have been very vehemently recommended to me. And it's a Audible only, ironically enough. So it is with Amazon's, audiobook service, and it's called The Breach. And I was actually just talking about this book with Lady Catherine shortly before I filmed this because of the fact that I had no idea about what had transpired with the Philadelphia experiment. Now, she was actually informing me that there is a little bit of revisionist history and things being, liberally doctored up, but the way that Nick Cutter at least describes it in some of the flashbacks within this, because there's our main narrative, which is about this cop up in, Canada, who was trying to investigate the discovery of a corpse that may or may not be the person based on all of the identification stuff that is accompanied in this little, rowboat almost of sorts. But it flashes back to the stuff in 43 with the Philadelphia experiment. And at least the way that Cutter talks about it is that the Philadelphia experiment was where, during World War II, there was the aspiration to make ships unidentifiable by radar. And so Tesla and various other brilliant minds of the time were trying to cover this particular ship in some said exterior that would make it undetectable, and then lo and behold, the thing disappeared and then reappeared a matter of minutes later, like hundreds of miles away. Crazy shit, right? Yeah. I've heard about, the Philadelphia experiment, the Manhattan Project, the Bermuda Triangle, all of these weird, unexplained sort of things, and yet I found this incredibly captivating despite the fact that it is not like a full novel proper. The Breach is most def a novella. One of my few criticisms of it, though, is the fact that it was most definitely veering back into things that we saw and, read and experienced in The Deep and also, in Little Heaven. In the fact that he loves his bugs and just the hive sort of mind. I mean specifically, like bees and wasps and stuff. It's something that Cutter has, she's pivoted back to so many friggin' times. And in this, the fact that you have a scientist who went missing, presumably dead, and he's trying to recreate said Philadelphia experiment, and he's doing it with a house as opposed to a warship, and just that there's lots of fascinating ideas, especially in the flashbacks to where the ship showed back up, and yet in its weird interim, which is very much informed by the mist, and as King was, lots of stuff that was Lovecraft, influenced, but just the discussion about certain ship hands being fused to the ship and whatnot, it's really messed up. It's really scary and really crazy. And those who did not find themselves in those nasty situations, they had more or less gone nuts. So you have testimonials from those who made it through the transition and talk about the fact that they could see just these wily, unbelievable creatures in the mist, in the distance. So really fascinating in said regard. I like our lead character. I like the fact that there is a little bit of a lost love story with a native woman up in Canada who, she's very much a perennial in the community, and so that's why she goes along to a company. And it still feels a little underdeveloped, dare I say. This is a novella that I feel like, it was released during the pandemic, so 2020, Audible exclusive and everything. I definitely feel like this is something that could have been a full-on novel, and that Nick, as he calls himself with these particular stories, he could have definitely explored and expanded with this particular setup, especially since he obviously had a major conviction and fascination with the Philadelphia experiment, and this could have been a full-fledged novel along the size of both of these, but instead it resides as a novella that, even if you're listening to it on Audible, is only 4 or 5 hours, something like that, so relatively concise, but I'm very hopeful that this particular author delves back into going full-fledged horror, because I know that he has been nominated under his other pen name, which is eluding me at this particular point regrettably, but even beyond that, he has a linguistic, just sort of free-flowing naturality about him, which I truly appreciate. And yes, it does remind me of Sai King, but then again, I've read everything Sai King, and so why the hell, if somebody is taking cues and inspiration, would I not make said connotation? So, I don't know, but this is officially, as I just gave my thoughts on The Breach, going to conclude my thoughts on Nick Ka-Tet. That's right. So I have to veer into Robert at this particular point. I have to do Swan Song. I have to do some of this other recommends. McCarthy's another one that people are constantly talking to me about. But yeah, as far as Stephen King recommended horror, I would be remiss if I didn't give my thoughts in this sort of quicker lightning round sort of scenario about the final 3 Nick Cutters. Even if I wasn't as dazzled as I was with these 2 particulars, I still greatly enjoyed them, despite the fact that there is familiarity, and not even just with Sai King's work and my beloved El Rey, but also within his own work, with just the hive mind aspect, the just introverted to losing yourself, very much like the beginning of the second act of Pet Sematary, where it's how much terror and horror can somebody withstand before they just go off the proverbial deep end. And so it's something that Nick Cutter obviously is very fond of exploring, and so, you know, props to him in said regard. But yeah, guys, if you're seeing this in early November, that means that there were, you know, scheduling stuff with most notably Dylan's New Nightmare. There is a link to the teaser that is in the end credits, and yeah, Cecil is finally getting to film it, which is incredibly exciting. I'm going to be on set on the first day and, you know, here and there on the following days. But really, man, I mean, his idea, his awesomeness, getting Dave McCrae, Miko Hughes, most notably coming back as Dylan, is incredibly exciting. And yeah, he's got a kick-ass crew. I cannot be happier for my dude. And yes, also a big fond farewell to Our Lady MPH, as I so affectionately call her, Marsha Parker Hall. Yeah, man, she's been a big integral part of the channel for a number of years, and she's still going to be, you know, kind of, you know, jumping on here and there remotely where she can, but she is on the verge of a awesome career relocation far beyond, as far as compensation goes, the stuff that we do here at the Horror Show. But yeah, guys, like, share, subscribe, you know the drill. And yes, the next live show, when it is actually able to be done, is going to be discussing Rage, which is the first Richard Bachman, aka Sai King story, and then Blaze, which is the last published Richard Bachman story. So it's going to be like kind of a dueling discussion in said regard. And so yeah, very excited about that. And then in the near future, I'm going to be doing another diversion, and it's going to be a Run to the Hill, and it's going to be all about Joe Hill's comic book Rain, which is an adaptation of the story from Strange Weather, which I love. It's the fourth and final one about like nails raining out of the sky, but the art is beautiful. I've been sitting on my copy because I did not order it directly through Amazon. I ordered it through eBay, and the shipper was like, they'll see you in 2 weeks. And I'm like, 2 weeks? Like, you're not that far from me here in Arizona, so what are you gonna do? But yeah, man, so that is coming up. And then also the, I believe, 25th anniversary of the Night Flyer, which is one that was just brought up during the live stream we did on the Sunday before Halloween, so that's exciting as well. But yeah, peeps, that is going to be the end of the proceedings here for today in the stand-in for Hail to Stephen King, and this is the last shout-out for, at least the moment, Stephen King recommended horror of the modern variety. So, I've been Fuego, and until the Reel of Ka, I guess it still makes sense for this particular bit, you know, comes back around, I say hasta luego. I hope that we have been well met. We share more of this palaver sooner rather than later, and until then, remember to stay scared, and in this instance, read Nick Cutter. I will most definitely say The Troop and the Deep are my personal favorites of his. We can go for a third and final. I mean, I guess The Breach is fascinating enough because of the fact that it is an Audible exclusive and very easily digestible, despite the disgusting aspect of some of the storytelling.